Chapter 5 Three Broken Threads. Sherlock Holmes had, in a very remarkable degree, the power of detaching his mind at will. For 2 hours, the strange business in which we had been involved appeared to be forgotten, and he was entirely absorbed in the pictures of the modern Belgian masters. He would talk of nothing but art, of which he had the crudest ideas, from our leaving the gallery until we found ourselves at the Northumberland Hotel. "Sir Henry Baskervilles is upstairs expecting you," said the clerk. "He asked me to show you up at once when you came." "Have you any objection to my looking at the register?" said Holmes. "Not in the least." The book showed us that 2 names had been added after that of Baskerville. One of Theophilus Johnson and family of Newcastle, the other of Mrs. Oldmore and maid of High Lodge, Alton. "Surely you must know that this must be the same Johnson I used to know," said Holmes to the porter. "A lawyer, is he not? Grey-headed and walks with a limp." "No, sir. This is Mr. Johnson, the coal owner, a very active gentleman, not older than yourself." "Surely you are mistaken about his trade." "No, sir. He has used the hotel for many years, and he is very well known to us." "Ah, that settles it. Mrs. Oldmore, too. I seem to remember the name. Excuse my curiosity, but often in calling upon one friend, one finds another." "She is an invalid lady, sir. Her husband was once the mayor of Gloucestershire. She always comes to us when she is in town." "Ah, thank you. I am afraid I cannot claim her acquaintance. We have established a most important fact by these questions, Watson," he continued in a low voice as we went upstairs together. "We know now that the people who are interested in our friend have not settled down in his hotel. That means, while they are, as we have seen, very anxious to watch him, they are equally anxious that he should not see them. Now, this is a suggestive fact." "What does it suggest?" "It suggests— Hello, my dear fellow, what on earth is the matter?" As we came up to the top of the stairs, we had run across Sir Henry Baskerville himself. His face was flushed with anger, and he held an old and dusty boot in one of his hands. So furious was he that he was hardly articulate, and when he did speak, it was in a much broader and more western dialect than any which we had heard from him in the morning. "Seems to me they're playing me for a sucker in this hotel," he cried. "They'll find they've started with the wrong monkey with the wrong man unless they're careful. By thunder, if that chap can't find my missing boot, there will be trouble." "I can take a joke with the best, Mr. Holmes, but they've got a bit over the mark this time." "Still looking for your boot?" "Yes, sir, and mean to find it." "But surely you said that it is a new brown boot." "So it was, sir, and now it's an old black one." "What? You don't mean to say—" "That's just what I mean to say. I only had 3 pairs in the world, and this old brown, this old black, and my patent leathers which I'm wearing. Last night they took one of my brown shoes, and today they have sneaked off one of my black. Well, have you got it? Speak out, man, and don't stand staring." An agitated German waiter had appeared upon the scene. "No, sir. I have made inquiry all over the hotel, but I can hear no word of it." "Well, either that boot comes back before sundown, or I'll see the manager and tell him I will go straight out of this hotel." It shall be found, sir. I promise you that you will have a little patience. It will be found. Mind it is, sir. It's the last thing of mine that I'll lose in this den of thieves. Well, Mr. Holmes, you'll excuse my trifling you about such a trifle. I think it's well worth troubling about. Why, you look very serious about it. How do you explain it? I don't attempt to explain it. It seems the very maddest, queerest thing that has ever happened to me. What do you make of it yourselves? Well, I don't profess to understand it yet. This case of yours is very complex. When taken into conjunction with the uncle's death, I am not sure that all the 500 cases of capital importance which I've handled, there is one which cuts so deep. But we hold several threads in our hands, and the odds are that one or the other of them guides us to the truth. We may waste time in following the wrong one, but sooner or later we must come upon the right. We had a pleasant luncheon, which little was said about the business which brought us together. It was in a private sitting room to which we afterwards repaired that Holmes asked Baskerville what were his intentions. To go to Baskerville Hall. And when? At the end of the week? On the whole, said Holmes, I think that your decision is a wise one. I have ample evidence that you are being dogged in London, and amid the millions of this great city it is difficult to discover who these people are, or what their object can be. And their intentions are evil, they might do you a mischief, and we should be powerless to prevent it. You did not know, Dr. Mortimer, that you were followed this morning from my house? Dr. Mortimer stared violently. Followed? By whom? That, unfortunately, is what I cannot tell you. Have you among your neighbors or acquaintances on Dartmoor any man with a black full beard? No, let me see. Why, yes. Barrymore, Sir Charles Butler, is a man with a full black beard. Ha! Where is Barrymore? He is in charge of the hall. We had best ascertain if he is really there, or if by any possibility he might be in London. How can you do that? Give me a telegraph form. Is it all ready for Sir Henry? That will do. Addressed to Sir Barrymore, Baskerville Hall. Which is the nearest telegraph office? Grimpen. Very good. We will send a second wire to the postmaster, Grimpen. Telegram to Mr. Barrymore to be delivered in his own hand. If absent, please return wire to Sir Henry Baskerville, Northumberland Hotel. That should let us know before evening whether Barrymore is at his post in Devonshire or not. That's so, said Baskerville. By the way, Dr. Mortimer, who is this Barrymore, anyhow? He is the son of the old caretaker who is dead. They've looked after the hall for 4 generations now. So far as I know, he and his wife are as respectable a couple as any in the country. At the same time, said Baskerville, it's clear enough that so long as there are none of my family in the hall, these people have a mighty fine home and nothing to do. That is true. And Barrymore profits from any of Sir Charles's will, asked Holmes. He and his wife had £500 each. Ha! Did they know that they would receive this? Yes, Sir Charles was very fond of talking about the provisions of his will. This is interesting. I hope, said Dr. Mortimer, that you do not look on suspicious eyes upon everyone who received a legacy from Sir Charles, for I also had £1,000 left to me. Indeed. And anyone else? There are many insignificant sums to individuals and a large number of people charities. The residue all went to Sir Henry. And how much was the residue? £740,000. Holmes raised his eyebrows in surprise. I had no idea that so gigantic a sum was involved, said he. Sir Charles had a reputation of being rich, but we did not know how very rich he was until we came to examine his securities. The total value of the estate was close to £1 million. Dear me, it is a stake for which a man might play a desperate game. And one more question, Dr. Mortimer. Supposing that anything happened to our young friend here, you will forgive the unpleasant hypothesis, who would inherit the estate? Since Roger Baskerville, Sir Charles's younger brother, died unmarried, the estate would descend to the Desmonds, who are the distant cousins. James Desmond is an elderly clergyman in Westmoreland. Thank you. These details are all in great interest. Have you met Mr. James Desmond? Yes, once he came down to visit Sir Charles. He is a man of venerable appearance and of saintly life. I remember that he refused to accept any settlement from Sir Charles, though he pressed it upon him. And this man of simple taste would be the heir to Sir Charles's thousands? He would be the heir to the estate because all that is entailed. He would also be the heir to the money unless it were willed otherwise by the present owner, who can, of course, do what he likes with it. And have you made your will, Sir Henry? No, Mr. Holmes, I have not. I've had no time, for it was only yesterday that I learned how matters stood. But in any case, I feel that the money should go to the title and the estate. That was my poor uncle's idea. How is the owner going to restore the glories of the Baskervilles if he has not the money enough to keep up the property? House, land, and dollars must go together. Quite so. Well, Sir Henry, I am one mind as you as to the advisability of your going down to Devonshire without delay. There is only one provision which I must make. You certainly must not go alone. Dr. Mortimer returns with me. But Dr. Mortimer has his practice to attend to, and his house is miles away from yours. With all the good will in the world, he may be unable to help you. No, Sir Henry, you must take with you someone, a trusty man, who will always be by your side. Is it possible that you could come yourself, Mr. Holmes? If matters came to a crisis, I should endeavor to be present in person. But you can understand that, with my extensive consulting practice and with the constant appeals with which reach me from many quarters, it is impossible for me to be absent from London for an indefinite time. At the present instant, one of the most revered names in England is being besmirched by a blackmailer, and only I can stop the disastrous scandal. You will see how impossible it is for me to go to Dartmoor. Well, whom would you recommend, then? Holmes laid his hand upon my arm. If my friend would undertake, 'tis there no man who is better worth having at your side when you are in a tight place. No one can say no more confidently than I can. The proposition took me completely by surprise, but before I had time to answer, Baskerville seized me by the hand and wrung it heartily. "Well, now, that is right kind of you, Dr. Watson," he said. "You see how it is with me, and you know just as much about the matter as I do. If you'll come down to Baskerville Hall and see me through, I'll never forget it." The promise of adventure had always been a fascination to me, and I was complimented by the words of Holmes and by his eagerness with which the baronet hailed me as a companion. I will come with pleasure, said I. I do not know what I could employ my time better. And you will report very carefully to me, said Holmes. When a crisis as it will do, I will direct you how you shall act. I suppose that by Saturday all might be ready. Would that suit you, Dr. Watson? Oh, perfectly. Then on Saturday, unless you hear the contrary, we shall meet at the 10:30 train from Paddington. We had risen to depart when Baskerville gave a cry of triumph, and diving into one of the corners of the room, he drew a brown boot from under a cabinet. "Mammason boot!" he cried. "Well, may all your difficulties vanish as easily," said Sherlock Holmes. "But it is a very singular thing," Dr. Mortimer remarked. "I searched this room carefully before lunch." "And so did I," said Baskerville. "Every inch of it. There was certainly no boot then. In that case, the waiter must have been placed there while we were lunching." The German was sent for, but professed to know nothing of the matter, nor could any inquiry clear it up. Another item had been added to the consistent and apparently purposefully series of small mysteries which had succeeded each other so rapidly. Setting aside the whole grim story of Sir Charles' death, we had a line of inexplicable incidents, all within the limit of 2 days, which included the receipt of the printed letter, the black-bearded spy in the hansom, the loss of the new brown boot, the loss of the old black boot, and now the return of the new brown boot. Holmes sat in silence in the cab as we drove back to Baker Street, and I knew from his drawn brows and keen face and mind, like his own, was busy in endeavoring to frame some scheme into which all these strange and apparently disconnected episodes could be fitted. All afternoon and late into the evening he sat lost in tobacco and thought. Just before dinner 2 telegrams were handed. The first ran, "I've just heard that Baskerville from the hall. Baskerville." The second, "Visit the 23 hotel was as directed, but sorry to report unable to trace cut sheets of times. Cartwright." There go 2 of my threads, Watson. There's nothing more stimulating than a case where everything just goes against you. We must cast around for another sense. We still have the cabman who drove the spy. Exactly. I have wired to get his name and address from the official registry. I should not be surprised if this were an answer to my question. The ring at the bell proved to be something even more satisfactory than an answer, however, for the door opened and a rough-looking fellow entered who was evidently the cabman himself. "I got a message from the head office that a gent to this address had been inquiring about 2704, said he. "I've driven my cab this 7 years and never a word of complaint. I came here straight from the yard to ask you to your face what you had against me." "I have nothing against you in the world, my good man," said Holmes. "On the contrary, I have half a sovereign to give you, if you can give me a clear answer to my question." "Well, I've had a good day and no mistake," said the cabman with a grin. "What was it you wanted to ask, sir?" "First of all, your name and address, in case I want to see you again." "John Clayton, 3 Turnpike Street, the Borough. My cab is out at the Shipley's Yard near Waterloo Station." Sherlock Holmes made a note of it. "Now, Clayton, tell me about the fare who came and watched this house at 10 o'clock this morning, and afterwards following the 2 gentlemen down Regent Street." The man looked surprised and a little embarrassed. "Why, There's no good in my telling you the things, for you seem to know about as much as I do about it already, she said. The truth is that this gentleman told me that he was a detective, and that I was to say nothing about him to anyone. My good fellow, this is very serious business. You may find yourself in a pretty bad situation if you try to hide anything from me. You say that your fare told you that he was a detective. Yeah, he did. When did he say this? When he left me. Did he say anything more? He mentioned his name. Holmes cast a swift glance of triumph at me. Oh, he mentioned his name, did he? That was imprudent. What was the name that he mentioned? His name, said the cabman, was Mr. Sherlock Holmes. I have never seen my friend more completely taken aback by the cabman's reply. For an instant he sat in silent amazement. Then he burst into a hearty laugh. A touch, Watson, an undeniable touch, said. I feel a foil as quick and supple as my own. He has got home upon the very prettiest of time, and so his name was Sherlock Holmes, was it? Yes, that's what the gentleman's name. Excellent. Tell me where you picked him up and all that occurred. He hailed me at 9:30 at Telford Square. He said that he was a detective, and then he offered me 2 guineas if I would do exactly what he wanted all day, and ask no questions. I was glad enough to agree. First, we drove down to the Northumberland Hotel and waited there until 2 gentlemen came out and took a cab to the Ring. We followed their cab until it pulled up somewhere near here. This very door, said Holmes. Well, I couldn't be sure of that, but I dare say my fare knew all about it. He pulled up halfway down the street and waited an hour and a half. Then the 2 gentlemen passed us and walking, and we followed down Baker Street and along to... I know, said Holmes. Until we got 3/4 down Regent. Then my gentleman drew up the trap, and he cried that I should drive straight away to Waterloo Station as hard as I could go. I whipped up the mare, and we were there in under 10 minutes. Then he paid me 2 guineas, like a good one, and he went away to the station. Only just as he was leaving, he turned around and said, It might interest you to know that you have been driving Mr. Sherlock Holmes. That's how come I know the name. I see. And you saw no more of him? Not after he went to the station. And how would you describe Mr. Sherlock Holmes? The cabman scratched his head. Well, he wasn't altogether so much an easy gentleman to describe. I'd put him at 40 years of age, and he was of middle height, 2 or 3 inches shorter than you, sir. He was dressed like a toff, and he had a black beard, cut square at the end, and a pale face. I don't know as I could say many more about it. Color of his eyes? No, I can't say that. Nothing more that you can remember? No, sir, nothing. Well then, here's your half sovereign. And there's another one waiting for you if you can bring any more information. Good night. Good night, sir, and thank you. John Clayton departed chuckling, and Holmes turned to me with a shrug of the shoulders and a rueful smile. Snap goes our third thread. When we were where we began, and he, cunning rascal, he knew our number, knew that Sir Henry Baskerville had consulted me, spotted who I was in the Regent Street, and conjectured that I had got the number of the cab and would lay my hands on the driver, and so went back this audacious message. I tell you, Watson, this time we have got a foeman who is worthy of our steel. I've been checkmated in London. I can only wish you better luck in Devonshire. But I'm not easy in my mind about it. About what? About sending you. It's an ugly business, Watson. Ugly, dangerous business. And the more I see of it, the less I like it. Yes, my dear fellow, you may laugh, but I give you my word that I shall be very glad to have you back safe and sound here on Baker Street once more.